Okay, so this is soldering practice part 2, and in this part we're going to solder these wires into the circuit board. So you strip these wires off during the wire stripping practice, and if you didn't, then go do that and make sure you have some wires stripped here. You can strip them as long as you want. I'd suggest about 1/4 inch, maybe 1/2 inch, to give yourself some room to work with. And then you're going to put them in your circuit board. Right? So again, using this green circuit board, the one that we had the pins in, you're going to put them in your circuit board in 2 holes side by side. Now I'm going to suggest you use the small side here. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. Put it right there. 2 holes. They have to be side by side because I want you to practice putting them side by side and soldering them together. And it'll help if you twist the conductors together, twist the little wires together like that. It'll help get them through the hole. There you go. Okay. So now I've got both wires through 2 consecutive holes there in my circuit board. Now what I want you to do is kind of hold it in place here like this, and my suggestion is that you bend the wires over like this and then one in the other direction. Right? That'll hold your wire tight to the circuit board. Right? It'll hold your insulation close to the circuit board. I can even pull it a little bit with my needle nose pliers here so that it's right there on the circuit board. Okay, like that. And then we're going to solder them in place. So I'm going to put a little bit of flux right on the spot there and right on the one next to it, just like that. Same as when we're soldering the pins. Now these take a little bit different methodology to put them in there because they're not as rigid as the pins. But I'm going to do the same thing. It's just you'll notice that they work a little bit differently. Right? So put that in there. Put some solder on my soldering iron. So a little bubble of solder on my soldering iron. And then I'm just going to put that right on top of the wire. And just let it melt in there. Once again, where the flux goes, the solder goes. Okay, so that one's in there. And we'll do it again. Solder on the tip of my soldering iron. I didn't get enough solder at that time. Okay, now look at that. That's a lot of solder on there. So I don't need that much solder. So I'm just going to kind of let some of that drop off there. Try to do that again. You put that much solder on it, it's going to get everywhere. And you just don't need that much. There we go. Now what you will find when you're soldering the wires is that sometimes the solder will travel up the wire depending on how the heat is being transferred, and so less of it will stick to the circuit board. So you got to be careful about that because you don't want your wires to come out. Right? And if they're not sticking to the circuit board, then the wires will pull out. Right? So my wires aren't pulling out there. Okay. And then I'm going to clip off the wires. Use my cutters here. And this is the other part that's a little bit tricky. Clip off the ends of the wires, right, because you don't want anything sticking too far out of your circuit board there. Right, and that's the other part of your soldering practice. Now you can turn that in so that I can see that you've been able to solder that.